The bookstore was quiet, the kind of quiet that makes every small sound feel dangerous. Pages turning. Soft footsteps. A distant bell above the door. Willa stood near the fiction aisle, gently adjusting the strap of her bag as she scanned the shelves. Golden dreadlocks fell over her shoulder, catching the warm indoor light in soft waves. She looked calm on the outside. Too calm for someone who had learned to survive in silence. But calm is never the same as safe. A shadow moved behind her. Then a voice, low, sharp, unwanted. You shouldn't be walking around alone. Willa turned slightly. A man stood too close. Too confident. Smiling like boundaries didn't apply to him. His hand reached for her wrist before she could step back. The moment his fingers touched her, everything changed. A second later, his arm was yanked backward with brutal force. He stumbled, confused, then froze completely, because the person holding him wasn't a security guard. It was a man in a perfectly tailored black suit, standing like he owned the entire room without saying a word. Tall, controlled, dangerously still. Red curly hair fell slightly over his forehead, softening nothing about his presence. His eyes were cold, but not empty. The kind of cold that had learned not to feel too much because feeling too much once destroyed him. Min-jun. The name carried weight in Seoul, even if most people never said it out loud. The man who had grabbed Willa's wrist slowly released her and backed away. Sorry. I didn't know. Min-jun didn't look at him. Not even once. Leave. Just one word. The man obeyed immediately. Silence returned to the bookstore, heavier than before. Willa stood still. Her wrist still felt warm where he had grabbed her, but it wasn't pain that made her freeze. It was him. Something about the man who just saved her felt wrong in a way she couldn't explain. Not dangerous. Not familiar. Worse. Like a memory she had lost, but her body still recognized. Min-jun finally turned slightly, adjusting his cuff as if nothing had happened. Are you hurt? His voice was calm now. Controlled again. Willa shook her head slowly. No. I'm fine. But her eyes didn't leave him. Neither did his. For a moment, the world around them seemed to thin out. Like everything was pulling back except the two of them standing in the middle of a bookstore aisle that suddenly felt too small for whatever was about to happen. Then it did. Her bag slipped. Not dramatically. Just a small mistake. But enough. Books hit the floor. A soft scatter of pages and sound. And something else rolled out. A pebble. Small. Smooth. Old-looking. It hit the floor once. Then stopped right at Min-jun's feet. Everything in him stopped with it. His breath. His movement. Even his thoughts. Slowly, he crouched down and picked it up. His fingers closed around it like it was something alive. His voice dropped. Barely a whisper now. Where did you get this? Willa frowned. It's mine. A pause. I've had it since I was a child. That sentence didn't comfort him. It shattered something inside him. Because Min-jun had heard that before. A promise. A riverbank. A girl laughing while placing a pebble in his hand and saying they would never forget each other. His grip tightened. Just slightly. But enough for his control to slip. And for the first time in years, Min-jun looked like a man who had just seen a ghost he had never stopped searching for. If you're enjoying this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for Crimson Petal. Because the moment you think you understand what's happening, everything is about to change. Min-jun didn't move after picking it up. The bookstore noise faded into something distant and meaningless, like the world had been muted without permission. His fingers closed around the pebble, not gently, but instinctively, as if letting it go would break something far more important than glass or bone. He had seen expensive things his entire life. Diamonds, art, buildings, people pretending to care. None of them ever made his hands shake. But this did. Willa noticed the change immediately. His posture didn't collapse. His expression didn't crack dramatically. It was far more subtle than that. Like a locked door inside him had just been touched by the correct key, for the first time in years. "What is that?" she asked quietly. Min-jun didn't answer right away. His gaze stayed fixed on the small stone. The engraving on its surface was faint but unmistakable. A mark shaped like a broken circle, imperfect, childish, yet deliberate. A memory tried to surface. Not fully formed. Just fragments. Rain hitting skin. A riverbank covered in wet stones. A girl's laughter cutting through the wind. A promise spoken too young to understand its weight. "If we ever lose each other, this will bring us back." His jaw tightened. That voice belonged to someone he had stopped dreaming about on purpose. Because dreaming hurt more than forgetting. Willa stepped closer, cautious now. "You look like you've seen a ghost," she said. Min-jun finally lifted his eyes to her. For the first time, he really looked at her. The golden dreadlocks. The dark warm complexion. The unfamiliar softness in her expression. Yet none of it felt unfamiliar to something deeper than memory. It felt unfinished. He extended the pebble toward her slowly. Not letting go yet. "Say it again," he said. Willa frowned. "Say what?" "Where you got it." "I told you," she replied, firmer now. "I've had it since I was a child. It's mine." That word. Mine. It landed differently in his chest. Because he had believed it belonged to someone else. Someone he had lost. Someone he had never stopped looking for without admitting it. Min-jun lowered his hand slightly, still holding the pebble. His voice dropped. "If that's true." His eyes sharpened, searching her face like he was trying to read something buried underneath it. "Then explain why I remember giving it to a girl who never came back." Willa froze. Not because she understood, but because something inside her reacted before her mind did. A faint pressure behind her eyes. A flicker of something she couldn't name. Gone almost instantly. But not empty. Min-jun noticed the smallest shift in her breathing. And in that moment, his certainty broke in half. Because either she was lying, or someone had stolen years of both their lives. Willa stepped back slightly. Not in fear, but in confusion she couldn't place. The air between them had changed again. He was no longer just a man who stopped an attack. He was something heavier. Something carrying a past she could not see, yet strangely felt pressing against her skin. "I don't know what you're talking about," she said carefully. Min-jun didn't react immediately. His gaze stayed locked on her face, not searching for lies, but for recognition. Something, anything, that would confirm she was not a stranger shaped perfectly like the person in his memory. But there was nothing. Only honesty. That made it worse. He finally spoke, voice lower now. "You're telling me this pebble has always been yours?" "Yes." "And you've never seen me before today?" Willa hesitated for half a second. "No." That single word landed harder than anything else. Min-jun looked away for the first time, exhaling slowly through his nose. His grip on the pebble tightened again, knuckles faintly pale. Because denial was easier than this. Easier than accepting that the only thing keeping him alive through years of sleepless nights might have belonged to a memory that never existed. But his body refused to agree with logic. His chest tightened. Not pain exactly. Recognition without permission. A voice inside him whispered something he didn't want to hear. "She's not lying. But something is missing." Willa noticed his silence, shifting into something heavier. "What is wrong with you?" she asked, softer now. "Why does this matter so much?" That question stopped him. Because how do you explain a childhood promise to a stranger who looks like the ending of it? Min-jun stepped closer again, slow this time, careful not to scare her. "It matters," he said, "because I've been dreaming about a girl who had this exact pebble since I was a child." Willa frowned. "A dream?" "Yes." "And you think that girl is me?" He didn't answer immediately. His eyes searched hers again. This time not for memory, but for truth buried beneath it. I don't think, he said finally. I remember. A quiet tension settled between them. Willa's fingers tightened around her bag strap again. Something about his certainty unsettled her more than fear ever could. Not because she believed him, but because part of her wished she did. Min-jun lowered his hand slowly, still holding the pebble between them like a fragile bridge. Then he said something that shifted everything forward without warning. If you didn't come back. His voice cracked just slightly at the edge. Then who did I bury in my memories for all these years? Willa didn't answer immediately. The question hung between them, heavier than the silence that followed. Because it didn't make sense. Buried in memories? A girl she had never met? A pebble she had always believed was simply hers? Yet the way he said it, like it had cost him something to speak at all, made her chest tighten in a way she didn't understand. I think you're mistaken, she said finally, though her voice had softened. Min-jun gave a small shake of his head. No. Just one word. Certain. Final. Willa studied him more carefully now. Not just his face, but the tension in his shoulders, the stillness in his breathing, the way his eyes refused to let go of her as if she might disappear if he blinked. There was something broken in him. Not visible, but deep. Controlled. Like someone who had learned to survive pain by turning it into silence. What if I told you I don't even remember a pebble like that? She asked. Min-jun looked down at the object in his hand again. For a moment, his expression softened. Not relief. Pain. Because that answer hurt more than denial. It erased certainty without offering anything in return. I would believe you, he said quietly. That surprised her. She expected pressure, insistence, demands. But instead, he sounded exhausted, like someone who had been fighting a war alone for too long. Then his voice lowered again. But my body wouldn't. Willa frowned. What does that mean? Min-jun lifted his gaze slowly. I don't sleep, he said. Not properly. Every time I close my eyes, I see a riverbank. I hear a girl laughing. I feel this pebble in my hand like it's real. He paused. And every time I wake up, I can't find her. The bookstore felt colder now, though nothing had changed around them. Willa's fingers loosened slightly around her bag. Because something about that confession didn't feel like storytelling. It felt like damage. Real damage. Unhealed. Min-jun stepped back slightly, as if realizing he had said too much. But the pebble remained in his hand. Unmoved. Unforgotten. Then, suddenly, a memory flashed through him so sharply his breath caught. Rain. A child's voice. Promise me you won't forget me, Min-jun. His eyes widened slightly. Willa noticed the change instantly. What? She asked. He didn't respond right away. Instead, he stared at her as if seeing two versions of her at once. One standing in front of him, and one buried somewhere in time he could no longer reach. His voice dropped into something almost fragile. You just said my name. Willa froze. I didn't. But Min-jun was already shaking his head slowly. Yes, he whispered. You did a long time ago. You're right to question that. That was my mistake in labeling and progression. Min-jun didn't sleep that night. Not even for a minute. He stood by the floor-to-ceiling window of his penthouse, watching Seoul move like nothing had changed. Cars flowed. Lights blinked. People lived their ordinary lives. But his world had already tilted. The pebble was on his desk, placed carefully, like it might disappear if he looked away too long. Two lines crossed on its surface, a symbol no one else in the world should have cared about. Except her. Willa. He said her name quietly. It felt wrong in his mouth. Because his mind refused to accept that she didn't remember him. Or worse, that she might never have been allowed to remember. A soft knock came at the door. Sir, his assistant's voice came carefully. The investigation team is ready. Min-jun didn't turn. Send them in. 3 men entered. Black folders. Tight expressions. The kind of people who didn't ask questions unless they already knew answers were dangerous. The lead investigator placed a file on the table. "We traced the Pebble design," he said. Min-jun's eyes sharpened. "And?" The man hesitated. "That symbol doesn't belong to any known brand or cultural registry." "But..." He opened the file. Old photographs spilled out. Min-jun's breath slowed. Children. A playground. A faded image of two kids sitting under a tree. One of them. A girl with long hair. Dark skin. Smiling. His chest tightened instantly. "That's impossible," he whispered. The investigator continued. "We found a record. A Korean orphanage transfer file. Years ago. A girl matching her description was adopted and later moved abroad. No further trace." Min-jun leaned forward. "What's her name?" The man paused before answering. "Willa. No last name recorded." The room went silent. The pebble on the desk suddenly felt heavier. Min-jun stood abruptly. "That's not possible," he said again more sharply. "I knew her. I grew up with her." The investigator exchanged a look with the others. "Sir, there's something else." Min-jun's eyes narrowed. "What?" The man slid another document forward. A medical report. Stamped. Official. Confidential. Min-jun read the first line. And his expression changed instantly. Subject. Female, 7 years old. Memory disruption experiment post-trauma exposure. His fingers slowly tightened. "What is this?" The investigator swallowed. "We think her memory wasn't lost naturally." Silence. The kind that presses into the skin. Min-jun stared at the paper. Then slowly looked at the pebble again. For the first time since seeing Willa, doubt entered his mind in a new form. Not whether she remembered him, but whether she was ever allowed to. His phone suddenly vibrated. Unknown number. One message. Only 5 words. "Stop looking. She is unstable." Min-jun's eyes darkened instantly. Because now it wasn't just memory. It was controlled. And someone was still controlling her life. Willa didn't go home immediately after meeting him. She told herself it was because she was late. Because the city was busy. Because a strange man asking strange questions didn't deserve space in her thoughts. But none of those reasons felt true. She stood outside the bookstore longer than necessary, fingers still wrapped tightly around the pebble. The carved symbol stared back at her. 2 crossing lines. Simple. Unimportant. And yet it refused to feel unimportant. A passing wind lifted her dreadlocks slightly, the gold tips catching faint light from the street lamps. Still, her mind stayed stuck on his face. Min-jun. The way he said her presence like it belonged to a memory instead of a stranger. Like he had lost her once already. She frowned. "I don't even know him," she whispered to herself. But her chest disagreed. That tight feeling again. Like something inside her was leaning toward a door she couldn't see. Across the city, Min-jun stood in his penthouse still staring at the same pebble. But now it felt heavier. Not physically. Emotionally. Like it was carrying a history he had been forbidden to touch. The investigator's files lay scattered on the table. Incomplete records. Missing files. Redacted names. And that one line that refused to leave his mind. Memory disruption experiment. He clenched his jaw. "No," he muttered. "That's not her." But even as he said it, his voice didn't sound convinced. His phone buzzed again. Unknown number. Another message. "If you approach her again, she will break." Min-jun's grip tightened. "Break?" he repeated coldly. His assistant stepped forward cautiously. "Sir, should we alert security?" "No," Min-jun said immediately. Then silence. A longer pause followed. His eyes darkened slowly. "Find out who is watching her." Meanwhile, Willa stopped walking. Something felt wrong. Not around her. Inside her. A flicker. A sudden image. A child laughing. A boy holding something in his hand. A promise. Her step slowed. She pressed a hand against her forehead. What is this? The image vanished instantly. She gasped softly, startled by her own reaction. A nearby passerby glanced at her. Are you okay? Willa forced a nod. Yes. I'm fine. But she wasn't fine. Not really. Because now the pebble felt warm in her palm, like it had reacted to her memory. Or maybe the absence of it. She looked down at it again. For a split second, she thought she heard something. Not a sound. A feeling. A name just outside her reach. Then, a car door slammed behind her. Willa turned quickly. Nothing unusual. Just traffic. But her heartbeat had already changed rhythm. Somewhere far above the city, Min-jun stepped out of his building for the first time that night. His driver opened the door. Where to, sir? Min-jun paused. For the first time, he didn't answer immediately. Because in his mind, there was only one direction now. A girl who didn't remember him. A pebble that shouldn't exist. And a silence that felt like it had been engineered. Finally, he spoke. Find her. The driver blinked. Sir. Min-jun's eyes sharpened. That woman from the bookstore. A pause. Then. And don't lose her again. Because deep down, Min-jun already understood something dangerous. This wasn't a reunion. It was a retrieval of something someone had stolen long ago. And whoever did it was still watching. Willa woke up before her alarm. That alone was unusual. Her body rarely betrayed routine, but today it felt like something had pulled her out of sleep. Not gently. Urgently. She sat up in bed, fingers instinctively searching for the pebble on her bedside table. It was still there, but it felt different. Heavier. Like it had absorbed something overnight. She frowned. This is ridiculous. Yet she still picked it up immediately. The carved symbol caught the morning light through her window. 2 crossing lines. The same shape. The same impossible familiarity. Her phone buzzed. A message from her uncle. Stay away from strangers. Especially wealthy ones. Willa stared at the screen for a long moment. Wealthy ones. Her mind flashed briefly. A tall man. Red hair. Eyes that didn't look at her like a stranger should. She shook the thought away immediately. No, she said firmly. I don't even know him. But her voice didn't sound like conviction. Across the city, Min-jun was already awake. He hadn't slept at all. His investigation team stood before him again, but this time the air felt heavier. The lead investigator placed a final file on the table. We found her location history, he said. Min-jun's eyes narrowed. Speak. The man hesitated. She's been monitored. A pause. Since childhood. Silence fell instantly. Min-jun's expression changed. Not anger yet. Something colder. By who? The investigator opened the file slowly. A name appeared. Dr. Samuel Hart. Min-jun's jaw tightened immediately. He's a neurologist, the investigator continued. Specialized in trauma recovery and memory suppression cases. The room went still. Memory suppression. The words didn't need explanation. Min-jun stood slowly. So you're telling me, his voice lowered, she didn't forget me. The investigator didn't answer immediately. Then, we think she was made to forget everything before a certain age. Min-jun's breath slowed. Everything. Not just him. Not just the pebble. Her entire past. His phone vibrated again. Unknown number. A new message. You are disturbing a sealed subject. Stop before she remembers too much. Min-jun's grip tightened until his knuckles turned pale. Sealed subject, he repeated coldly. Then he smiled, but there was nothing warm about it. Is that what she is now? Meanwhile, Willa walked through the city without realizing her steps had taken her somewhere familiar. A street she had no reason to remember. Yet her feet slowed anyway. She stopped in front of an old wall. A playground behind it. Empty. Quiet. Something inside her chest tightened immediately. She shouldn't be here. But she couldn't move. Her fingers curled around the pebble again. And then it happened. A sound. Not external. Internal. A boy's voice. "Don't go." Willa's breath caught. Her eyes widened slightly. What? The playground shifted in her vision. For a fraction of a second. A child was there. A boy standing near a swing set. Holding something in his hand. Looking at her like she was something important. Willa stumbled back. No, that's not real. The image shattered instantly. She gasped, pressing a hand to her chest. Her heartbeat was too fast. Too loud. Too unfamiliar. Back in the city, Min-jun suddenly stopped walking mid-conversation with his security team. They froze. "Sir." Min-jun didn't respond immediately. Because, for a second, just a second, he felt it too. A pull. Like something had cracked open in the distance. And through that crack, she had almost remembered. His eyes darkened. "Move faster," he said sharply. The team straightened immediately. "Yes, sir." But Min-jun didn't follow them. Instead, he looked toward the direction of the playground report in the file. His voice dropped low. "If she remembers even one thing." A pause. Then, everything collapses. And somewhere across the city, Willa slowly opened her hand again. The pebble was no longer just a stone. It was starting to feel like a key. And she didn't know what door it was meant to open. The night arrived too quietly. Not peaceful. Controlled. Like the city itself was holding its breath. Willa stood outside the glass building, staring at her reflection without fully recognizing the woman looking back at her. Her fingers tightened around the pebble. It was warm again. Warmer than it should have been. As if it remembered something her mind refused to touch. Behind her, footsteps approached. Slow. Deliberate. She turned instantly. Min-jun stopped a few steps away. No guards. No noise. Just him. And the silence that always followed him like a shadow. Willa's breath caught. Not fear. Something else. Something she couldn't name. "You followed me again," she said carefully. Min-jun didn't answer immediately. His eyes were not on her face this time. They were on the pebble. Like everything he had been searching for had finally stopped running. "I didn't follow you," he said quietly. A pause. "I found you." Willa frowned. "That doesn't make sense." "It does," he replied. Then he took a step closer. This time she didn't step back. That alone surprised her. Min-jun noticed. "So you're not afraid of me anymore?" "I don't know what I feel," she admitted honestly. That answer hit him harder than any resistance would have. Because it was the truth. Raw. Unfiltered. Empty where memory should have been. He exhaled slowly. "Give me the pebble." Willa instinctively tightened her grip. "Why does everyone keep asking me that?" Min-jun's voice softened. "Because you're holding something that belongs to both of us." Silence. A long one. Willa studied him carefully now. Not just his appearance. But his exhaustion. The way he looked like someone who had spent years arguing with a ghost only to finally see it standing in front of him. "I saw something today," she whispered suddenly. Min-jun's eyes sharpened slightly. "What did you see?" Her hand trembled. "A boy." A pause. Her voice lowered. "And a promise." The air shifted instantly. Min-jun's expression changed. Not shock. Confirmation. Because he had seen it too. Every night. For years. Willa stepped closer to him now, without realizing it. "I don't know why," she continued. "But it feels like I've been losing something my whole life that I can't name." Min-jun's voice came out quieter than before. "You didn't lose it. A beat. You were taken from it. That line broke something in the air. Willa looked up sharply. What are you talking about? Min-jun slowly raised his hand. Not touching her. Just pointing at the pebble. That symbol, he said. We made it. Willa froze. No. Yes. Her breathing became uneven. That's not possible. But her body betrayed her. Because her heart reacted before her mind could reject it. Min-jun stepped closer again, just enough for his voice to lower. You said I wouldn't forget you. Willa's eyes widened slightly. You said if I ever did, he continued, you'd find me again. Her fingers shook. A fragment broke through. A child laughing. A boy holding her hand. 2 pebbles. A promise under a tree. No, she whispered, stepping back now. Pain flashed across her face. It hurts. Min-jun immediately stopped. Not forcing her. Just watching. Because he understood something then. This wasn't just memory loss. It was resistance. Like something inside her had been trained to reject the truth. Behind them, a black car slowly pulled up. Min-jun didn't turn. He already knew. Willa looked between him and the car. What's happening? Min-jun's voice lowered. Someone doesn't want you to remember. The car door opened. A man stepped out. Dr. Samuel Hart. Willa's expression changed instantly. Confusion. Then discomfort. Doctor? Dr. Hart smiled gently. But it didn't reach his eyes. Willa, come with me. You're not safe here. Min-jun stepped forward immediately. No. Dr. Hart's gaze shifted to him. Calm. Cold. You're interfering with a medical case. Min-jun's eyes darkened. She's not a case. A pause. She's my past. That silence was heavier than anything before. Willa stood frozen between them. 2 truths pulling her in opposite directions. Her head began to hurt again. Images crashing harder now. A playground. A promise. A hand refusing to let go. And then, a voice. Min-jun's voice. You'll always find me. Her knees weakened slightly. Dr. Hart stepped forward. Enough, he said firmly. Her condition is unstable. Min-jun finally looked at Willa fully. His voice softened. Willa, what do you feel when you hold that pebble? Tears formed in her eyes. I feel like she struggled, like I lost something I was supposed to protect. Silence. Then Min-jun spoke gently. You didn't lose it. A pause. You're holding it. The pebble slipped slightly in her hand. Her breath hitched. And for the first time, the memory didn't disappear. It stayed. Willa's eyes widened. Min-jun. His name. Not guessed. Not questioned. Remembered. Dr. Hart's expression shifted instantly. Stop her, he began. But it was too late. Willa took a shaky step forward. And everything she had been forced to forget finally began to return.